Welcome to Getting Rich Together. I'm your host, Syama Bunten. This show was born from my own journey. Coming out of a divorce, I reached out to 50 women to talk to them about money. 95% of them did not want to go there. That's when I realized we need spaces where wealth isn't hidden in silence, but shared in possibilities. Here, you'll meet women from all backgrounds, trailblazers, risk takers, visionaries, each expanding what wealth can look like. This is your place to be inspired, to discover new pathways, and to remember that we rise by building wealth together. Getting Rich Together is a Wealth Catalyst production. At Wealth Catalyst, we bring together education, networks, and great opportunities for women to build wealth and change the world. Now, on to today's show. Today, I am joined by the fabulous India Gary Martin. India, you not only are a former CTO, COO in international banking, leading teams across 40 countries, holy bananas, but you're now an advisor to Fortune 100 CEOs and founders, and the founder of 2 leadership and training companies serving global entrepreneurs. To say the least, you are fucking busy. You are also the visionary behind the Act Three Convening, something that I just think is so powerful and beautiful, how you've provided this opportunity for globally women to come together in midlife to talk about things that they're navigating, identity, power, transition. Needless to say, I have been waiting to have this conversation with you between all of your trips and travels and all of the service work that you do. It is such a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Syama. Thank you for having me here. I'm so excited. I was looking so forward to this. I'm just grateful that you have me here, and I'm looking forward to our chat.
India, I feel like we could consume the whole conversation with like your brilliance, legacy, all the stuff that you're up to today. And yet we will start with the very beginning. Take me back to a young India, someone between the ages of 10 and 12 years old. Where were you in this beautiful world and life that you were living? And what was money like around you?
Interestingly, okay, so when I was 10, that would be like, what, 5th or 6th grade? I think that I was probably in maybe Cincinnati at that time, because we moved around a lot. Now, we can talk about that later. But I think I was in Cincinnati. And I will say that as a young girl, I wasn't that confident. I didn't really believe in myself so much. I wasn't sure of myself at all. It was a really interesting time for me. My parents had been recently divorced. And so I wasn't quite sure of my place in the world as it stood. And when I think about money, I just knew that I wanted some. And I remember, and at that time, actually, I think that was around the time my mom got remarried to my stepfather, who is, I always tell him he saved me for a variety of reasons, because while he wasn't my biological father, he was in the home with me all the time. And he taught me how to play basketball. He taught me how to do all the things. He also taught me how to play a mean round of blackjack. And that was my first introduction. He taught me how to play blackjack with quarters. And I got really good. And that's why I like to go to Vegas. But that's a whole different path we'll talk about another time. But interestingly,
you were cleaning up around the school block at a young age.
I was like, do you really want to play blackjack with me? But what I will say is one thing I did get from him, and this is like my first introduction to money for my family, was its value. And that while you could always make it, you have to be good stewards of it. And that was something that he always talked about. He was like, he's still, even now, like he knows where every penny is of everything. He's always been that way. And so I think for me, the one thing I'll say that around my relationship with money at that time is I remember him telling me when I learned to play blackjack that scared money doesn't make money. So you can't be afraid of it. Like you can't be afraid of it. And you can't be afraid. And he used to always say, never spend more than you can lose. And so those couple of things early on, I think, shaped me in a lot of ways around my relationship with money.
This idea of scared money.
It's like talking about abundance in a different way.
It lands so much in terms of the way most of us are raised to actually grip and hold on to it. And when it's like there's that scarcity, but then to be told to have a relationship to it that's a lot more fluid. Like, how do you feel into that? So knowing you wanted money, knowing that you could probably take someone down in basketball. I can't wait to hear your favorite positions to play basketball. And knowing you could take people down in blackjack, When you were in high school, were you like, all right, I'm going to get a job. I'm going to double down on my studies. I'm going to take people down in blackjack. Like, how did you navigate high school and what did you think? What did you know of yourself at that time?
Blackjack came back later. I let it go after I learned to play really well as a little kid. I was a student athlete. And I remember for me, that was a real coming into what it meant to be a girl or a woman, what it meant to be a woman, almost a young woman. And as an example, there wasn't women's track at my university and my high school, and I loved running. That was one of my things. And so like, I went to the athletic director. I'm like, I'd like to run men's track. And he's like, you can't do that. And I was like, why can't I? He told me I couldn't. So I went home and told my mom, he said I couldn't. And she was like, I'll be damned if you're not. And she came and we petitioned, and my sister, myself, and another girl ran boys track. We always lost, but that wasn't the point. We actually won one race when it was, because it was a relay and they were all boys and one of us. So we won a race. But the point is, that's when I got to this thing around you can really do what you want to do. It doesn't matter what the rules say necessarily. There's always space to play within the boundaries, but still get the job done. And that was the first thing. And then the second one was I played basketball, but I wasn't that good. I'm just going to be honest. I loved it, but I wasn't that good. So much so that one time when I scored my first basket, they couldn't find my name on the roster because I'd never scored before. And they were like, number 26 scored. Everybody else had a name except for me. But I loved sports. And I think sports are really a great way of teaching young women resilience, teaching you leadership, just really having to be amongst a team of people when you're doing team sports as opposed to singular sports. Being amongst a team of people and building relationship and building community is something that I really learned from those days. And so I would say that for me, it was that. It was learning, how I fit. When I was talking about earlier, not knowing that, I started to find where I was and where I fit. When I got to high school, I came out a little bit more and took a few more challenges. And my mom used to always say to me, like, you can do whatever you want to do. Don't let anybody tell you can't. And so that kind of was the message that I took. And I did a lot of kind of probably maverick type things in high school because my mom told me I could. She's like, just make it happen.
Oh my God, go mom. What a wonderful voice in your ear. I feel like of all the voices to have someone be like, go crush it, whatever you want to do, like you can do it. And also to have her make the effort to make it happen. It wasn't just you go do it on your own. It's that you have my full backing and support, and I will open up doors for you if I can leverage being an adult to do that. And I think that's really powerful. Team sports, I think, is one of those things that we also have learned so much over time, just really create for great leaders to understand team dynamics early, to know the alchemy of how people think and operate. And also, I think even just in the fundamentals of understanding strategy, right? It's like, all right, this is how we play. And it's not necessarily who you are, but it's how you're going to show up in this scenario in order to achieve these goals. Makes for a really interesting upbringing for you, India. I can start to now see how this young woman's like, all right, world, I'm going to start to take over and do whatever I want.
Yeah, I think I did to some extent. But a lot of it was, I'm an eldest daughter too. And I think they're birth position in terms of the way that you show up. And I felt when I was in junior high for those 3 years, my mom was in law school for those 3 years at the same time. And I had a 1.5-year-old brother at that time too. And I'm one of 6, oldest girl. And I had a mom who was working and doing all the things despite the fact that she has all these children, and not in a great way. She had kids and she had done psychology in college. And then she's I want to go back to law school. When my daughter's in junior high, I have all these kids, and she did. And I remember falling asleep on the sofa and taking my brother out from her because she was sleeping and he was sleeping. I remember all those things. And so I think that a part of it is I also learned responsibility in that I had siblings that relied on me for things, and they looked up to me for things. And when my mom was around, they'd be like, India, what do you think? I took on some of that role of supporting her, but also of being the eldest sibling and what that means in birth order and how you show up because of it.
Yeah, there's a lot of responsibility there, whether it was asked for or not. I feel like sometimes we think of being the eldest as just on the frontier. I'm the eldest as well, but being the eldest also means that things happen to you that don't happen to the other children. And in your sort of first line of defense, and no one knows that you're there breaking the fall on things and you're there.
That is exactly exactly.
And I don't know if they ever know. Like, I also think that that's like a special club of firstborn, and especially if you're a girl, because then it's like there's this whole other lens of what that means. Yeah, that is.
We're the mamas. That's what it is. We are the second mamas to some extent.
So then were you so ready to go away to college? Were you like, okay, I'm ready to go?
I was. I had a really great time. I have a sister. One of my sisters is 11 months younger than me. So we're really close. We're like twins. And that was really hard for me to leave her. That was a really difficult time. Leaving my twin, that was not an easy thing to do. But I went to Spelman College. I went to this all women's environment, and it's actually the thing that really propelled me for sure.
How did you decide where you wanted to go? Did your sister follow suit? Were you the one who was like, and then everyone comes here? Like, how did all that go down? Okay.
One of my siblings did, but my first daughter did, but that's another story. She's there now. But no, they didn't follow suit at all. And my sister said to me, I'm not coming there. I just need you to know I'm not coming there because I need to not be in your shadow. And I was like, okay. And now she's like, why the heck didn't I go there? Why did I come with them? Like, I told you, because her daughter actually went there too. So her daughter went, my daughter, and she's like, how am I not a part of this club? I'm like, I told you. But when I thought about schools, Spelman was really high on my list just because I'd always lived in places, especially in the US, just being frank, where I'd had challenges with a variety of things. Like being one of only brown or Black people in a space can be very difficult. And I really wanted to go to an HBCU for that reason. I was like, I just want not to have to, I want to know what that's not like. And then to do it with women who were all kind of firsts was amazing. When I say first, these women everybody was the president of their class or everybody was whatever. And so it was just a level of intellectual rigor with women who were just like me that just took a lot of the pressure off. I could excel without having to think about any of the things around me and the environmental things, which was really a gift. And it's really interesting because there's all this debate about HBCUs and should they exist and blah, blah, blah. And it's not about excluding anybody else. It's about feeling for once that you're in a space where people get you and understand what it's like for you to walk in the shoes that you walk in. And so it kind of propelled me. Like leaving there, I could go anywhere in any place, space or whatever and feel like anchored in who I was.
That's beautiful. What a wonderful experience to have chosen for yourself. I think that sometimes when we're young, we don't know, right? And we don't know what we want or what's going to feel right, or there's a lack of confidence and decision making. But to have such clarity over wanting the sense of belonging, like I can breathe, I can relax, I belong. We're all like intellectually at the same level. We're all wanting the same things. And we get to challenge and push each other from a place of not an external identity, but from the brilliance that we are, and really get to have rigorous conversation and build in interesting ways. Did you know you wanted to study history when you went to college? Did you have, like, I want to be a historian? What did you think you wanted to be at that time?
I did, but here's the thing. I should also be full transparency. I was like number 7 in my family to go to Spelman too. So I'm like 7 down. There's more behind me. So that kind of helped that I understood what the outcomes were for people because I'd seen it. They were like so tight, like this whole like sister thing. And I was like, oh, I want that. But history. So I wanted to go to law school like my mom. And there were a couple of majors that people did. And it was mostly political science, history, or English. And English was cool, but that wasn't going to be it. Political science I thought was too narrow, and I love history, so I chose history. That is such a tale. That's the truth, but that was the truth later. Let me take one step back. I actually entered college as a theater major.
Get out. Oh my God, that's amazing.
I entered as a theater major. And then I loved it. I did it for a year, and then I was like, I'm going to be broke. I was like, this is not what for me. I'm not even kidding. I was like, I didn't trust in my ability to be like, if I'm going to be on stage or if I'm going to be behind the camera, you really have to be pretty good. And even if you are good, there's no guarantees in this.
You can't get more degrees in theater and get better jobs in theater.
Exactly. And so I was like, you know what? Something about this is not ringing well with me in terms of my lifestyle. So I actually decided I'll probably go to law school, and I went to see what the courses were. And I was in the liberal arts school. So the first year didn't matter anyway, because it was everything. You were doing all the things. And I did a couple theater courses. But yeah, and then I changed to history. But I loved history. I do love history and always have. And so it wasn't that far-fetched.
But then to also go from like theater to then this like prolific career in finance,
I was going to do law. And my whole thing was I wanted to be a courtroom litigator. And that is theater. Truly it is.
Yeah.
And so I could draw that line. I was like, okay, I can go litigate. And then I found out that I had to do some research too. And I was like, oh no. I was like, I can't do that. I can't do that. Let's go to Wall Street.
What were some, I mean, as you were graduating and figuring out how to export yourself into the world, where did the inclinations or ideas to go into finance, to go into Wall Street? Like, how did you start to connect those dots? Was there like a pivotal conversation with someone where it was like eye-opening? Was it like, okay, I want the money and like, this is where I need to go? How did you start to think about these next steps?
If you can't tell, I'm not now, but you can probably surmise that I was quite a precocious, interesting thought. Yeah, a little precocious. So I had no idea what I was going to do, frankly. When I decided, like, I was like, this law school thing, do I want to do this? I don't know. Maybe I'll go work for a year, then go to law school. I wasn't sure. And so I just was like, I went with my friend who was going to an interview on campus, like to get a job. And it was Morgan Stanley. And I went with her. I just accompanied her. I wasn't going to interview. I went with her. And this woman is like, are you here to interview? And I'm like, no. And she's from Morgan Stanley. I didn't know it. And I was like, no, I just came with my friend. And she was like, well, why aren't you interviewing? And I was like, why should I interview? It's not what. And she was like, I like your energy. I think you should interview. And I was like, tell me more. Tell me more. And this woman, Cheryl Gil-Riley, hired me at Morgan Stanley. And she is still my friend today. I spoke to her last week and we've known each other for now 35 years. It's hilarious. But she was like, she was like, she's like, I need you to come and interview. Because I was like, I'm just here. I was like, I'm not here to interview. And she said, you have a resume? I was like, yeah, I have a resume. And she's, can you go get it? And I was like, yeah, it's in my room. And I went and got it. And she just come and interview. And I was like, okay. And she was like, there's something about you. And what they looked for it was actually for a technology training program. And I was like, I don't do tech. And she was like, no, we hire non-technical majors and we teach them how to code and how to be technical because we believe that it's easier to teach more creative people to code and they come up with really interesting solutions to things that more technical people wouldn't. And so I go into this tech training program. Okay, this is great. And so I interviewed two places, Morgan Stanley and an insurance company called Unum. And I was like, and they flew me to Tampa, Unum did. And I was like, this is fun. And then Morgan Stanley was like, come to New York. I was like, oh, this is it. This is it. I was like, I found my people. And so that's how I got there. That's how it started. It was a complete fluke. It was completely because I turned up with my friend at an interview and was being precocious.
Quick pause. I want to share something I'm hosting this year. It's called the Freedom 2026 Tour. I'm bringing small, in-person salons to cities across the country to talk openly about money, power, and choice. If you want to be part of one, the details are in the show notes below. Back to the episode.
It's refreshing also because today we just hear so much about young people who are like, oh, like really, they're treating networking like it's a job and they're treating these things like so transactionally and in some cases over-engineering outcomes, right? It's like at the age of early 20s, 22, like you don't actually know what you're going to become. You have ideas, you have interests, like, but chips fall where they do and opportunities open up that you may not even know about.
I know, but I think that kids now have it's so hard. It's so much harder because like when I graduated from school, there were like 10 things you could be. Like, honestly, it was like you were a teacher, a doctor, a lawyer, a accountant, a therapist. They were like 10 things, a nurse, whatever. There were like 10 things. Now there's like a gazillion things you could be. And I think it makes it so much harder for them because like it's so hard to narrow down anything with all the things there are. And then I think there's also this notion of everything being on demand because that's what they were born into. And everything just happens as it happens. And the thing that I would say about my life and career is that every single thing I've done has emerged. Like none of it has been planned. Not that's always the best idea, but it has all emerged because I do trust the universe puts you where you need to be and that I was in the right places at the right time for me. It wasn't for everybody. I was in the right places at the right time for me. And even things that felt crazy and felt bad, actually, when I look back, I'm like, oh, that's why that happened. That worked. And that's how I got to this thing.
The word that comes to my mind is faith. just having faith that everything's always working out for me and that there's some intuition and taking the next step, and then it unfolds. And then you get to have this really creative and juicy life. So here you are, you're working in technology. Obviously, there are some twists and turns that sort of get you to this next evolution, but this was a great sort of space to jump in and start to understand this huge ecosystem, right? I feel like until you work in finance or you start to learn that ecosystem, it feels like a big black box, right? So for me, it feels like a big black box. I'm like, okay, all I know is that there are like 1,000 different jobs you could have, and there are all these niche specializations. When did you start to think about where your interests were going to start to get more refined, or you were going to start to choose what some of these career paths were going to look like?
I never did. I'm being completely honest. Like every single role I took in the 25 years I was in financial services was opportunistic. Seriously. So I wasn't like, okay, so let me take a step back. I did know, I was like, I want to make managing director. I knew that. That was very clear. Like I knew that I had ambitions of running something, of running a big group or doing I had those ambitions, but I wasn't sure what that was going to look like or how. And I think a part of it was I started in tech, but then as a technologist in financial services, you get to know the business better than the businesses do because you have to code for them. So you have to know exactly what you're building. Like you can't just be like, oh, let's just build a thing. You get to really understand the mechanics of a business. And I was working for commodities at the time. And then I moved into commodities marketing on the trading floor in sales and trading. So I moved into commodities marketing from tech, having supported that organization. And so my point in all of this is I moved into it because I'd done something else. I planned to be in tech, I thought. And then I moved into commodities marketing, which is completely different. And I think over the course of my career, I was in the front, middle, and back office operations, in the front office doing things in technology, did whatever kind of came in that moment. And the other thing was that I knew that my dad is a diplomat, and he was a diplomat before he retired, my biological dad. And because of that, I spent a lot of my time as a child outside of the US. And so I also knew that I wanted a job that would let me be around the world and be international. I knew that had to be a thing for me. And so like when I was looking at the banks, which I found really interesting, is they were all international. And so that made it exciting for me because I could get an opportunity maybe to transfer to somewhere else or do that thing, which is actually exactly what I did. It ends up that I think maybe 19 of the 25 years or 18 of the 25 years I was outside of the US. And so that was one of my other things. So as long as it met the criteria of I'm going to be finding my path to managing director and I get to do things internationally with international experience, then I was flexible about the rest of it.
And did that include also, as you're thinking about these next steps in career progression, was the salary, in terms of salary compensation, negotiation, did you have this faith that, everything is going to unfold in the right direction? Did you take action at every sort of interview and job role that you wanted, promotion or new experience you had? How did you parallel your career progression with also like personal cash creation and like starting to think about the development of what your foundation would look like financially?
As I became more senior, here's the thing. There's a person who was pivotal in that for me. And I won't say his name. I'm going to send him the interview send him this after it's over the podcast or discussion so you can hear it. But I remember that I was working at a particular organization and I was going to be, and this is, I don't know, in the 90s. And I got assigned to London to go on this project. And it was going to be 2 years that I would go. And as a part of that, I was going to be reporting to a new person in London. So I go there and compensation time comes and he calls me and he's like, you need compensation. Everything will come through. I was like, okay. And then I look at my bank account and I'm like, he's overpaid me. So I go back to him like, you've overpaid me. I tell my boss, you've overpaid me, because I hadn't ever seen cash like that. And he was like, actually, no, I'm normalizing you with the people who are here, who are doing what you do. He was like, I didn't overpay you. He was like, it's fine. Because I was like, how do I wire the money back? Because I think that you overpaid me. That was what I thought. Because I was shocked, because this was like, and I don't know, I'll give directionally, it was high 5 figures. And I wasn't expecting that. at all. It was more than my base salary. So I thought something's wrong. And he's, no, I'm bringing you equal, because they had this thing called total compensation, which was like your base plus your bonus equals your total comp. So I was so low on bonus so low on base that he made my bonus like really high to make sure that it balanced out. And I thought I thought he made a mistake. But when he told me that and explained, no, this is total comp, this is how it works. Nobody had ever said that to me before. And then he promoted me for 3 successive years with corporate titles. And he was like, you should have had this already. And so it was because somebody caught me up and pulled me and this is the other thing, just being completely honest. And it's a part of it is because these are the people in power, but it's always been men who've pulled me along, always. And I love women. So this is not anti-women, but I'm just saying that what I had to figure out was that in the space I was in, there weren't women. There weren't a lot of women, and there weren't women in positions of power or positions of influence to make decisions. And so I had to figure out, like, what is it? Who of these men share my values? Because that's where I need to connect with them on, because then I can find somebody who could mentor me. But it can't be about gender, because there's none of that. And it certainly can't be about race, because there's none of that either. So I was kind of like, what is it? And I thought, and it was actually such a wonderful, in hindsight, sometimes it felt really lonely as one of the only women and only people of color. But actually, in hindsight, what it helped me to do was figure out how to connect people on their humanity without having to think about those things, because I didn't have the option. I would have if I had the option, but I didn't.
Wow. I'm like letting it all sink, India. It's powerful to think about how values alignment and mentorship and looking for people who really see the world or feel similar things or have similar ways of wanting to see the world can support and uplift you. And looking for mentorship, I think, is also such a critical component of that, and not needing it to look a certain way also, I think, is a big part of that. I feel like there can be a desire for, I want this kind of mentor who's like me, who does this. And this idea that mentorship is really about the values, the integrity, and is there an opportunity for me to really connect with someone who I believe can help me? Congratulations on that sort of foresight into that and being able to find these champions.
No, hindsight, it was not foresight. It really was, because I didn't have a choice. But in hindsight, looking back, I'm like, that actually was such a good thing for me, because it helped me navigate places and spaces very well that I wouldn't have been able to navigate probably. And that's not to say that I didn't want women mentors and I didn't want one of them. I really did, but there were very few. There were a couple that I had, actually. Then I'll shout them out. Carla Harris, who was at Morgan Stanley, was one of them. And at the time, there's a woman called Edith Cooper, who retired from Goldman Sachs, but who was also at Morgan Stanley. And they were like, they didn't even know it, but they were like guiding lights for so many of us, because them just being there meant something. But when it came for like my people who were directly aligned to my roles and my careers, I had some amazing men who were just like, come on, girl, let's go. I'm going to go through this process.
And it also feels like along the way, people really see you. That's and you allow yourself to be seen. And I think that there's something really beautiful about that. So here you are, you get this bonus check. You're like, holy bananas, I have this cash and I can do something with it. What did you do with it? Was it like, all right?
I wasn't that smart. Let me be honest. I spent it. I was not smart. It was the first big thing I'd ever seen. However, Cheryl, that woman I told you about who hired me at Morgan Stanley, she was like, okay, here's what I'm going to need you to do. I need you to defer 50% of your bonuses to your 401k. I need you to max out your 401k every year. And I didn't understand what that meant. And I didn't understand the matching thing. And again, somebody pulled me aside and said, do not, like, okay, this is cute this year. Go ahead and do that. Cute little bags, whatever you're doing, this foolishness that you're doing, go on your little vacations. You can still do that, but I need you to defer 50% of your bonus into your 401k every year. And so that kind of started me on a path to doing that too.
Thanks, Cheryl. That's great. That's
great, because it was pre-tax, right? Because the money that goes in, when I deferred 50%, it was 50% pre-tax, whereas the taxable amount is 50%. So I was like, if you get a bonus, let's say for $50,000, it's 20, you get 25 in your pocket. But what that meant was that I got to actually take, let's say if it was 50, I took 25, the 25 went fully in. And it's deferred until, you retire, but who cares? I'm like, that's great.
Wow. How was it your career took on this international purview and obviously building a life and obviously building your wealth and finding home and community in different markets? Like it's very different than like, I'm going to set up shop in San Francisco and New York. It's like, I'm going to set up shop and have to learn all the new rules. I often hear from people who've emigrated to the US and they're like, I had no idea about credit scores and like all this stuff that we have that sort of defines our systems of like value when it comes to money. What was it like to start to understand the systems of these other places you were living in when you were in the UK? How was it to build in that capacity?
The good thing about going as an expat is that corporations help you do it. So I didn't have to figure it out, to be honest. Like they told me what I needed to do. And so immediately I went and they set an offshore account for tax purposes. They did that stuff for me or told me like, here's what you do. And they give you an advisor. So to be honest, I was really lucky in that I had somebody to do that for me and help me do that and set up my accounts and think about the most tax efficient ways of doing things or whatever it was. And when I first got to the UK, credit score wasn't even a thing. Like it is now, it's the same, but it wasn't back then. There wasn't that. But what they would do is they would check to see if you were registered to vote. That would impact your score. Like even the UK, even now, if you're not registered to vote, it impacts your credit score. And I was like, that is novel because people are like, let me go and register and let me go and vote because I'm registered now on the electoral roll. They look for the electoral roll to see if you're registered and it adversely impacts your credit score if not. And the other thing is that bad credit was tied to an address. So if you moved into an address where somebody had bad credit, you had to go clean it up for them. Like they left and it's on your address. It wasn't on your name. It was on your name, but it was also on the address. So the address would be seen as a risky address and you had to fix it. It was wild.
That's insane.
Now it's not. Now that they have like credit like we do, credit scores like we do, and all the 3 credit bureaus are there now. It's different. Before, that's what it was. And you'd be like, somebody who was really ratchet lived here before and they messed up the credit at this address. And I'm like, that's not me. It wasn't me who didn't do that. So yeah, that was an interesting one.
Oh, I love that. That is so crazy to think about. Just understanding how to navigate that. Your career, I feel like I could have you for hours here, but your career was such a great ascension and had spent so much time internationally. What was it like to start to think about family, right? And starting to like think about where you wanted to be or how did place start to take hold of you as your life started to progress?
I married a British person. So that helped because I was in the UK for a lot of that time. And I thought I was going to stay there. I went to the UK and I thought I was going to be there forever. I didn't think I'd come back. Once I determined that I was going to be there, then I could start with the family stuff. I have 3 kids. And so that helped a lot. And I did I think I might have mentioned, I went to Japan and Hong Kong for a couple of years, I think almost 3 actually, and stayed there. And I was in Frankfurt for a year, which was cool too. But most of it was in the UK. And so once I'd married somebody from the UK and we decided we were going to settle there, it was a much easier thing. It was like deciding your family anywhere else you were going to be in the world, like as long as you were stable. So they didn't go all the places with me. But it was good that I had a nice, sound home in the UK that I had planned forever. I hope this is not.
Yeah. And how was it like setting up, I feel, navigating school systems or obviously the value systems, I think are so different when we think about creating family. I even know just anecdotally when I visit my family in other parts of the world, I'm like, wow, like we really see things differently. And your background, obviously growing up here, now you're raising children that are culturally adopting a different way of thinking about things. How did you see that coming together in terms of not a parenting podcast, in terms of just reconciling like how you were raised and how you were starting to see your children affected by the communities around them?
The thing is, I think I mentioned my dad was out of the country most of my life and so was I. So I had spent so much time in other places that it didn't feel unusual to me. Or my dad and my stepmother live in Sweden. So I don't really have, and my sister lives in Australia. I didn't have a fixed abode mindset anyway. And I actually didn't think that I needed to be in a place to have kids either. They could be wherever I was. I was like, I'd have them and strap them on the back and go.
I love that.
Like, yeah, that's how I felt about it. It helped that I had a British husband who then resettled in the UK. When I think about how I raised my kids or what I thought about around the kids, and they know that they're part American. They know that they're part British. They know that one set of their grandparents lives in Sweden. They've traveled. So my kids are close, not quite, but probably close to as well traveled as we are. My husband had a similar kind of job where he was all over the world too. And so kids they obviously live in the US, but they only came here when they were already like, my son has never lived in the US, and my eldest, and my daughters came when they were like in junior high and a little bit younger. And they just see the world differently. Like they see the US as home for now, but I don't know that will always be home for them. And I don't give them those boundaries. I'm like, live where you want to live, go to wherever in the world you want to go. And they understand they can. And anybody can, to be honest, if that's what you decide you want to do. And it's not necessarily only an economics thing. I have to be really clear about that. People are like, oh, you have the money to do it. That's not really what it's about, because when I moved to the US, I came with nothing really. And that's a whole business story. I like to be a citizen of the world, and I want to teach my kids to do that and to find home wherever their family is, not necessarily a place.
It sounds like they are true global citizens. This ability to feel comfortable anywhere, this ability to feel like you can plop down, get on a plane, take the fear out of people who are like, I don't know. And you're like, actually, at the end of the day, I think when you're a global citizen, you understand the humanity that binds us together of people are people. And it really doesn't matter where you go. Everyone's really motivated by the same triggers, the same thing. I mean, it's like we're all the same in this way that's like painfully similar.
We really are.
So you got the managing director role. You got the thing you wanted, which was so incredible. Here you are. You're like, I've made it. Like, this is what I wanted. I'm achieving the thing that I want. And then things start to unfold for you differently, right? Like new ideas, new emergence, right? To your point earlier about unfolding, right? These things keep coming up. And then all of a sudden it's like the next volume, right? Comes out and it's, here's what this is going to look like. How did things start to unfold with you once you hit this like apex of I am where I want to be? What happened next?
There were two things. One is I've always been an entrepreneur on the side. Like I've always had some side gig going. That is just who I am.
Okay. Double click on that. What have been some of the side gigs you've done? And what does India, the like earlier entrepreneur, look like?
Like I'm always trying to sell something or make something. I mean, I was like, oh, I'm a wholesaler. So I'm going to buy blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to sell them all on Amazon early days. It was all that kind of stuff. And then I was doing like, I'm going to be a trainer and I'm going to do training services outside. I'm going to do job training for people. And I started this little job training company. I was all on the radio talking about job training. It was wild. I've always done like little bits and pieces all while I'm doing my like day job. But then one of the things that caught me was I was doing some research at work about industries that were growing through recession. We were having some conversations. I was like, what industries grow through recession? And I found that beauty was like number one, because what they were saying is that I was working with some research analysts and they were saying women will buy small things in recession when they won't buy big ones. So like during a recession, they might buy lipstick or lip gloss or a mascara to feel nice, but they might not buy the shoes, the bag, or like expensive clothes or clothes at all. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I went to go look at it and I was like, this is interesting. Color cosmetics was like in Europe, the smallest category. And in the US, like nail polish and color cosmetics was really high. And if you look at the trends, without getting too technical, the UK, particularly in Europe, trailed the US by a few years but back then they trailed by a few years in terms of picking up on some of the things that would happen. And so I was like, I'm going to just go and try to manufacture some color cosmetics and see what happens. Yeah, it was crazy. So I go off to France and find this nail polish manufacturer to manufacture nail polish for me. Now I was like, here's my criteria. It can't be like, it has to be chemical free. I can't have it too high in chemical, all these things, because I had allergies, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I go off and develop these 84 colors. Don't ask me. And then I'm thinking like, how am I going to now sell them? I was testing it to see what it would be like.
Totally. That's so cool.
And I came back and then I was like, yeah, there are no real luxury nail salons. I think I'll open one or two. So I did. And I was like, I'll put my own product in these salons. I wasn't working in them. I hired people. But I was like, I'll put my own product in the salons. And so I did. And then somebody came in from a big UK retailer and was like, what is this product? What's this nail polish? And we told them and they invited me in to pitch for it. And it was Harvey Nichols, which is a big UK retailer. And they picked us up in all of their stores, and asked me if I'd open a nail bar in one of their stores.
Oh my gosh, India, this is so wild. Also to think about capitalizing
while I have a job. So I said to my husband, I'm going to have to hire an MD for this company. I can't be at JP Morgan and do this. And he was like, you're going to be the MD. This is our money. He's like, you're not handing this to anybody. You need to do it. He's like, you've been saying you're tired. You said you wanted to do something else. Our 3-year-old doesn't know who you are. Why don't you just do it? Because she didn't. She was like, she would go to the nanny before me, and I was getting really frustrated.
Yeah.
So much in my day job. And so I was like, okay. And so I quit. And we were in the UK, Europe, and in the Emirates. We were in about 200 doors across all of those. And it was really great. But then we outpaced ourselves in terms of our ability to be able to, because we were manufacturing ourselves. And like the gap in retail, we were too small to get like big retail lines of credit yet because we were babies still. And so I had to fund it essentially from our profits and myself. I was my own investor and I couldn't find investors because we were unproven and blah, blah, blah. So I basically bootstrapped the whole thing. And then never took investors ever. And then we got to a point where we just couldn't do it. Like we had to pay too much. We were getting these bigger and bigger orders. And the gap, like sometimes in retail, it would take them 4 to 6 months to pay the invoice. And I just I couldn't keep filling without getting the cash in. And so and then we started talking to investors and then Brexit happened and I couldn't get investors in the UK. So then that's when I came to the US. And I was like, to my husband, I have an American passport. I can just run over there really quickly and let's see what happens. And I came and I'm still here. I came, I found a couple of people, but they wanted too much of my company, like 65%. And I'd done too much and put in too much money. The best offer was 65% of my company. And it was not a passion. It was something that I saw as a really great business idea. And I had to make a call to let it go. And so I sold off all the stock in the UK, it's called TK Maxx, not TJ Maxx. I sold off all the stock to TK Maxx, which is called in the UK, and then folded it.
What a saga.
That was my first thing out of corporate.
Talk about also like positive trauma.
It made me broke. I'll tell you that. A lot of that money I saved, I invested a lot of my own money. And that was such a mistake in the way that I did that. Like in hindsight, it was such a really not great decision. And I bet on me, so it wasn't a bad decision because I was betting on me and I really had a great company, but it folded very quickly and it took me down with it to some extent.
And it sounds like it went fast. This sounds like it was like
up fast and down fast.
Yeah, like it was a real.
I wasn't insulated from anything. I didn't understand the insulation that I would require and how much risk I was actually taking when the market turned. It did when Brexit happened too.
It's so interesting because everyone really glamorizes entrepreneurship, but few people really talk about what it really looks like when everything you have is on the line in that capacity, especially in retail where you're dealing with these like products and hard goods and tariffs now and, all these different components.
It can take you out so quickly.
Yeah.
And it took me out. And I didn't go bankrupt, but I wasn't far off it. And I'm very open with people about that. I'm like, make sure that if you're an entrepreneur, make sure it's not just a hobby because you have to be prepared to hang off the edge of a cliff sometime. And if you're not prepared to hang off an edge of a cliff and you're going to be worried about what it means not to pay yourself for a month sometimes because it happens, then you need to think about something else because you have to be prepared to take the risk.
Totally. And then obviously with things shattering comes an opportunity not only for sitting in the pain of what it is that you're experiencing, obviously beyond just a business that has collapsed, you're still also a mom, right? And you're still also holding it together for family. And that's a lot to hold internally. It's like, how do you protect your children, but also your emotions and your mindset is suffering? How did you think about it? What were the steps that helped you start to rebuild in many ways? What did that process look like to find new product market fit with new ideas or new ways in which you would express yourself? Because while this vendor didn't hit the marks for what you consider to be successful, it did open up something for you from who you are and what you're capable of in a way that hadn't yet happened for you. So it's like it really blew open the doors to you as creator and like what those expressions would look like. How did you start to navigate those next on-ramps into creating this future that you have now?
To be honest, I didn't think about it. Unfortunately, I ran headlong because I was like, and I have to figure it out. I have 3 kids. I have one who's going to college. I have 2 that I have to think about college. It was all those things. And my husband was very similar. Like my husband, bless him, has come along with me on these journeys, and he's been like, I believe in you, do it. He's never put the brakes on me ever, because he fully believes in me. And to some extent, that's great. But to others, in another way, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. It was that whole thing. But what I will say is that I'd always been a coach. I've always done this kind of work. Like, I really just took on some of the work that I did in my corporate life. And I was like, I can very easily work in an advisory capacity. I have a lot of experience in the corporate space, and I have a lot of global experience, which means that I can help people around globalization, strategic advisory. I can do coaching, executive coaching. There's a lot of things I can do. And I started doing that. And then I started working on the Executive Masters in Leadership program at Georgetown as a coach, as one of the kind of coaches to help the folks who were in the programs, and started developing my coaching practice. And so that's how it evolved. Again, it's an emergence. It was an emergence for me. And I'm now coming into 9 years in that business. And it's had its ups and downs, but it's great. And I love doing the work of advisory with people and helping them to think through really hard stuff. I've been through some hard stuff, and I've been able to leverage the fact that I have done all of it. And like, I have done from being in a big corporate to globalization, to being an entrepreneur, to understanding what retail looks like across multiple sectors and countries and everything else. I've done a lot of that. I know what it is to be up. I know what it is to be down. I know what the mistakes are. And I've been able to leverage that really well in this business that's now coming on 10 years old, which helps people be better leaders.
Oh, that's so powerful, India. You have turned your experiences into such a great service for others. It's like, how do you impart that knowledge? You've embarked on an incredible other service-based initiative with Act Three. And I think it's really incredible what you've built with that, what the future of that looks like. Can you share with me a little bit about how that began to unfold? What was the emergence around creating a third space for women to be able to come together to re-envision what their lives would look like in this third act?
It happened because a lot of my clients, my executive and coaching clients who are senior women, like, whenever I meet with them, they were never talking about like work. They're always talking about the things around it that were making it hard, which were all related to things in midlife. Like, it might have been caretaking, or like, I'm working all the time, but I have to worry about my kids, and my dad has dementia, or my mom's ill, or whatever it was. And then it was like this whole menopause thing. What is this? What's happening to my body? I can't sleep at night. I'm hot. It was all the things. And I was like, very rarely am I talking to these women about their careers. I feel like I'm talking to them more about the things around them that are challenging them to do their work, because they have so many other things that happen in midlife. And then I started thinking, we can't opt out of it either. We don't get to be like, I'm not going to do this menopause thing. It's not functional. I think I'll pass on that. Some of us might want to, but it doesn't often happen that way. And then I started doing research and found that there are like 300 symptoms of menopause for women. I really want to have a convening where women can come together and talk about it, because there's lots of stuff happening, but I didn't want it to be about menopause. I wanted it to be about the manifestations of menopause. I felt like there were so many conversations happening on menopause and hormones, and all that's great. But I was like, but what about when you get to midlife and you're like, okay, this might be my last job. What am I going to do? Or I'm now an empty nester. Where am I going to live? Do I keep this big? I'll let it go. Or I have to figure out caring for my elder parents. Or I marry this person and it's not the same person I married. Do I still want to be here in the same way? Does this serve me still? It was all those really difficult conversations that you get to in midlife. And I wanted to create a space to do that. So I pulled together the Act Three Convening. And unfortunately, so what ends up being a fortune, which was unfortunate to start, we had a number of corporate sponsors who were really into it, and then post-administration DEI stuff all pulled out. And so we then had nobody to fund it. And so we had to go virtual. A month before, we decided to go virtual, but we got people from 14 countries.
Wow, it's so amazing. And of course, because you're going all over the world.
I wanted it global, and we got 500 people from 14 countries, which ended up being actually more than I could have ever imagined. And then we decided that we were going to do one-off live sessions.
Yeah.
And various around the world. And we just finished India in September.
Oh my God, that's incredible, India. That's wonderful. I know I've kept you past time. I just have two short questions. So first is, we've talked a lot about money in terms of what we did do with it, what we didn't do with it. Certainly losing money when it came to this business, and what some of those feelings and what it can look like to rebuild. But I'd love to ask you, in the most recent past, what have been some of your most favorite ways to spend your money? What has been the most fabulous things, experiences? What has brought you joy with your capital?
Oh, that's such a good question. A couple of things. The first one is the house that I'm in now. I bought it big enough for my parents to be able to move in with me. And for me, that is like, as they age and as they don't live with me now, but they're here quite often, they have a space of their own in my house. And that is a gift. They have their own little suite and it's so cute. And I did it for them and I got to help my mom. We decorated it with her and it was just, it's that. So I think that's one big thing. The other one for me is that like I'm putting my daughter through school debt free. The fact that she'll come out and have a start, it's been hard. It is hard to do this. It's very difficult. It is not without its sacrifices. But if I'm going to put it somewhere, it's let's invest it in the people, like the future for my family. So I think there's that. And then I'm going on my amazing cruise at Christmas. I don't know, Honduras and Belize and all these cool places. So that's my other one. I am a travel junkie. And that is one thing I do a lot of. I travel all the time. And personally, as much as I do business, I do personally as well. And I like to go everywhere in the world. So I tend to go for experiences rather than stuff.
Wow, how wonderful. And then my last question is, India, you clearly are supporting others, standing in service. When you sign up to help people solve some of the biggest problems and challenges in their companies and help them strategize on the future, you're giving so much of yourself. This last question is more about, what are you calling in right now? What can we do as a community who listen to this podcast? How can we champion you? What can we do for you? Personal, professional? What are you calling in?
I love this question because I'm a recovering don't ask anything from anybody person who just gets on with it. I love this question. And it really is just send me people. Send me folks that you know who need this kind of work. Send me people who need strategic advisors. I am a whisperer. I really am. And so like I have a couple of CEOs who call me now. I'm a whisperer. Like I solve things. I'm a great sounding board. And I find that the more senior you become, and it doesn't just have to be CEOs, by the way, but the more senior you are, the more lonely it can be. And so having somebody you can test things with who's been there and done it. I also sit on boards too, corporate boards. So I have the perspective, not just of being an executive, but actually sitting on boards and knowing what boards want from executives. I've been on a public one, private and non-for-profit. So I've seen that all too. And so it really is about just being a sounding board for folks and being an advisor to people and folks who are like, you know what, this is somebody you should probably talk to who might give you a space to be able to work some things through. That is me.
I love that.
I'd love that. And if anybody wants to help me get scholarships for my next child, so I don't have to come out of my pocket for college because she's in the 11th grade and she wants to be a psychologist and she wants to study psychology and her list of schools are all very expensive. If anybody wants to give me a scholarship for her, I'd be happy. She works for anything.
Oh my God. I love that. Everyone, you heard the asks. These are very good asks. India, thank you for sharing your wisdom, your spirit. Thank you for your vulnerability, your kindness. I'm grateful to know you. And this has been a fantastic episode. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Getting Rich Together. My hope is that you leave every episode feeling more inspired, more powerful, and more connected. Until next time, remember, you have everything it takes to create wealth on your terms.